This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic. All right, we're going to be solving trig equations, and we're going to solve these two equations. Now, notice the equations are exactly the same. Sine of x equals -1/2, but the first problem asked to find all real numbers in the interval 0 to 2 pi, whereas the second one asks us to find all real numbers that satisfy the equation. So let's do the first one. Find all real numbers in the interval 0 to 2 pi that satisfy this equation. That's the same thing as saying solve this equation for real numbers in this interval 0 to 2 pi. So we're trying to find the values for x so that the sine of x is -1/2. And we're only going to pick numbers between 0 and 2 pi. Now, as you're doing this, you could think of these as real numbers. You could think of them as angles, right, per x, but you're going to write your answer in radians. So where is the sign going to be negative? Well, that's only going to happen in quadrant 3 and 4. So if I look over here, where would those angles be? Or where would the terminal side be? Depends how you like to think about it. Where you're going to have a sign of -1/2. And remember that could be thought of as -1/2, where -1 would be the y and 2 would be r. So here's one of them, and here's the other one. If you draw the little special triangles here, this would be square root of 3, -1, 2. This would be negative square roots of 3, -1, 2. So you do have to know your special angles, etc. Now, what angles are these in from 0 to 2 pi? So the first one, right here, I think in terms of degrees usually. I think of this as 80 plus an extra 30 degrees, or 210 degrees. So if you want to think in terms of degrees, you can get to 10, and then you can convert that to radians. The other way is you could think of that's, well, pi plus an extra pi over 6. That's going to be 7 pi over 6. So remember, since we're asked to write it as real numbers, we would get 7 pi over 6. It looks like a funny looking. Let's make that real clear. 7 pi over 6. All right, so we know that one of the solutions here is 7 pi over 6. All right, now what about the other angle? And remember, you may want to go down here, but that would be a negative angle. So you do have to think about it as going all the way around. And that would be, for instance, all the way from here to here. Notice that's almost all the way to 2 pi. It's 2 pi minus pi over 6. That's 11 pi over 6. Or you might think of 360 minus 30. That's 330 degrees. But you were asked to write it as real numbers, so it would be 11 pi over 6. So the other solution is 11 pi over 6. And those are the only two places where you're going to get, between 0 and 2 pi, where you're going to get the sign equaling -1/2. There's two places where the sign is negative. It's one place in quadrant 3, one place in quadrant 4. Now, we're going to use this information to solve the next problem. So if we now want to find all real numbers, not just this one, right? Not just between 0 and 2 pi, we have to think, well, where are all the places where the sign is going to be -1/2? So here's the second problem. Find all real numbers that satisfy this equation. Sine of x equals -1/2. Well, we know that 7 pi over 6 is a solution. We know 11 pi over 6, but are there other ones? And in fact, there are infinitely many, because any coterminal angle with both of these, right? In other words, if you add 2 pi or subtract 2 pi, will also be a solution. For instance, like I said at the when we were doing this angle right here, negative pi over 6 is a solution, but it's just not in 0 to 2 pi. And you could get that by doing, by the way, 11 pi over 6 minus 2 pi, right? Which could be written as 12 pi over 6. That's one way of getting negative pi over 6. But then you could subtract 2 pi again, you could subtract 2 pi again, you could subtract 2 pi again. This goes on forever. So here's the idea. If you want to find all real numbers that satisfy a particular equation, first figure out the ones in between 0 and 2 pi. Okay? So that's what we did in this first question. And it was 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. We did answer that question. But if we want to find all of them, we have to do all the coterminal angles with that. And how do you do that? You just add 2 pi k, where k is an integer. So now the solution would be not just 7 pi over 6, but 7 pi over 6 plus 2 pi k. Or, and in fact, let's do a little bit better notation here. X such that x equals 7 pi over 6 plus 2 pi k, or x could be 11 pi over 6 plus 2 pi k. Now that gives us infinitely many solutions. We are getting all the solutions coterminal with 7 pi over 6 and 11 pi over 6. K is an integer in this case. And since k is an integer, we should make it clear by writing that here, where k is an integer. In other words, k can't be any number, right? It can't be a fraction. It can either be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., or -1, -2. We want to make sure we either add multiples of 2 pi or subtract multiples of 2 pi. All right, so for the first problem, we only have two solutions because there are only two places where the sign of x is -1/2 between 0 and 2 pi. But if we want all solutions, we take and add a multiple of 2 pi, positive or negative multiples, to each one of these solutions, and this is what our final answer looks like. This is your math gal, Julie Harland. Please visit my website at yourmathgal.com, where all of my videos are organized by topic.